An original podcast from podlatino.com.
There is a gesture so routine that no one notices it anymore. Someone pulls a card from their pocket and hands it to another person. In that silent exchange, something happens that took centuries to build. The document says that person is who they claim to be. It has a photo. It has a number. It has a signature. And the entire world, from airports to banks, from hospitals to border crossings, accepts that claim as truth. How did we get here? How did we go from a world where no one could prove who they were to a stranger, to one where a chip loaded with biometric data decides whether someone can board a plane? The answer is not in the technology. It goes much further back. It lives in the very human obsession with remembering faces, and in the equally human need to control who is who. For thousands of years, identity was a local matter. You were recognized by your neighbors, your family, your community. That was enough. A person who traveled to another city was, by definition, a stranger. No references, no verifiable history. Commerce, justice, and credit all depended on face-to-face recognition. If no one knew you, you were no one. Or you could be anyone. The portrait was the first attempt to solve that problem across distance. It did not emerge as a tool for identification. It emerged as an instrument of power. The rulers of Egypt, Rome, and the medieval empires had their image engraved on coins, carved into sculptures, painted onto walls. That image traveled where the body could not. To see the emperor's face was, in some sense, to encounter him. By the Renaissance, individual portraiture had become common practice among European elites. Wedding portraits traveled between courts so that future spouses could see each other before ever meeting. State portraits helped identify ambassadors and formalize alliances. It was identification, but it had a fundamental flaw. Copying a portrait was not difficult. Assuming someone else's identity was not either. The first major transformation came from an unexpected direction: chemistry and light. In 1839, Louis Daguerre presented a process in Paris that captured reality with a precision no human hand could match. The daguerreotype did not interpret. It did not flatter. It did not choose what to include. It recorded. A face placed before the camera was fixed onto a silver plate, with every detail the eye could perceive. The shadow beneath a cheekbone, a scar along the jaw, the exact angle of a nose. Authorities were quick to see the potential. If a painted portrait was interpretation, a photograph was evidence. By the mid-19th century, prisons had begun photographing inmates, not as a courtesy, as a record. If that man reoffended, crossed a border, or changed his name, something now existed that could contradict him: his face. Something had come into existence that had never existed before: the possibility that the state could hold a verified image of its citizens. But a photograph is useless if it cannot be found when needed. Through the 1870s and 1880s, police stations in major European cities were accumulating thousands of portraits, with no efficient way to search them. Checking whether a suspect had a prior record meant going through hundreds of faces by hand. Alphonse Bertillon was a clerk at the Paris Police Prefecture, and he had an idea. He had noticed that human body measurements, taken in combination, were practically unique to each individual. The length of the forearm, the circumference of the skull, the distance between the eyes. If enough measurements were taken in a standardized way, you could generate a code that represented a person with enough precision to distinguish them from anyone else. The system was called Bertillonage. For 20 years, it was the international standard for criminal identification. Bertillon also standardized police photography. He created the format still in use today: one frontal shot and one profile, same distance, same lighting, same framing. The mugshot was not a portrait. It was a technical document designed to be compared, filed, and reproduced. The system had weaknesses, and in 1903 it collapsed in spectacular fashion. Two men named Will West and William West were confused with each other at a prison in Kansas. Their Bertillonage measurements were nearly identical. Their faces looked alike, too. But they were different people. What told them apart was their fingerprints. Francis Galton had demonstrated in 1892 that fingerprints were unique and permanent. Edward Henry developed a classification system that made them easy to organize and search. The West scandal was the opening the new method needed. By 1910, fingerprinting had replaced Bertillonage in most police forces around the world. But fingerprints solved a specific problem: identifying someone already in physical custody. They did not work for verifying identity at a distance. They could not keep pace with the mass movement of people that the 20th century was beginning to produce. War changed everything. The First World War moved tens of millions of people across borders that had previously been porous. Soldiers, refugees, workers. Nations needed to know who was crossing their boundaries and why. In 1920, the League of Nations standardized the modern passport, a personal document with a photograph issued by one state and recognized by others. The idea that an individual could move internationally with verifiable documentation became a global norm within a single decade. At the same time, countries developed national identity documents for domestic use. The photographed face now came paired with an official name, a date of birth, a registration number. The individual had been captured, at least on paper, by the machinery of the state. The problem was that paper aged. It got lost. It could be forged. And verification still depended on an official manually comparing the face on the document with the face of the person standing in front of them. The second great transformation came with circuits. Computers did not immediately change personal identity, but they changed the logic of record-keeping. Data that once lived in a paper file in a basement could now be retrieved from another city in seconds. Citizen records began to be digitized in the 1960s and 1970s. Social security numbers, immigration files, and criminal records moved from paper to magnetic storage. And when that archival capacity merged with something researchers had been attempting for decades, the system made a leap that changed everything that had come before. Getting a machine to recognize a face was not a simple task. The first serious attempts came in the 1960s. The results were poor. The problem was complexity. A face changes with lighting, angle, age, and expression. What a human instantly recognizes as the same person was enormously difficult to translate into an algorithm. The breakthrough came with deep learning. Starting in the 2000s, neural networks trained on millions of images began outperforming humans at specific facial recognition tasks. Governments and corporations paid close attention. The systems that followed transformed the scale of what was possible. Today, facial recognition operates at a scale Bertillon could never have imagined. Airports across dozens of countries use biometric systems that compare a traveler's face against their passport photo in real time. Phones unlock when they see their owner's face. Photo platforms automatically identify the people in images. The document someone hands over at a border no longer needs to be read by a human. A scanner reads the chip. A camera captures the face. An algorithm compares. The whole process takes milliseconds. It is worth pausing to look at that full chain. For centuries, the question of whether someone was who they claimed to be was answered by another human being. With memory, with judgment, with intuition. There was room for error, yes, but also room for context, for exception, for the kind of recognition that goes beyond data points. What we built, piece by piece, was a system that replaces that judgment with measurement. First, the coordinates of Bertillon, then the photographed document, then the biometric chip, then the algorithm trained on millions of faces. Each step was a gain in precision and scale, and each step was also a transformation in what it means to be identified. The face someone shows at a border crossing, on a screen, or before a camera on the street is no longer simply a person's face. It is a data point in a system built to compare, archive, and verify. The face became a credential, and the question that leaves open is not a technical one. It is much older than any of this. How much of who we are can actually fit inside a number?